الحرمين الشريفين بتقديم دعم فوري للجيش وقوى الأمن الداخلي وسائر القوى الأمنية الشرعية طوال مليار دولار.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri makes a surprise return to Lebanon. Many officials hope his return will break the political and security crisis. Israel hits the Gaza Strip with missiles and artillery for the first time in 3 days. And U.S. President Barack Obama authorizes target airstrikes against Islamist fighters in Iraq. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri made a surprise return to Lebanon after more than 3 years abroad due to security concerns. Hariri visited the grave of his father, late former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri, in downtown Beirut upon his arrival. Following talks with Prime Minister Tamam Slam in the Grand Sarai, Hariri said he returned to discuss ways to implement the billion-dollar grant provided by Saudi Arabia to help the Lebanese army in its combat against terrorism in Arsal. Hariri headed to Center House in downtown for talks with U.S. Ambassador David Hale, who did not make any comments after the meeting. He also met former Prime Minister Fouad Sanyura and Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk, who congratulated him on his return. The Future Movement leaders had left Lebanon shortly after the collapse of his unity government when Hezbollah and its allies quit the cabinet on January the 12th of 2011. He has been residing in Saudi Arabia since April of 2011, citing security concerns. Hariri did not say how long he planned to stay in Lebanon. Political and religious figures in Lebanon have welcomed Hariri's return, expressing hope that the move will bring progress to the country stuck in political and security crisis. Syrian ambassador to Lebanon, Ali Abdul Karim Ali, welcomed Hariri's move, expressing hope that the return would be in the framework of fighting terrorism. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja also welcomed his return, telling a Nahar newspaper that this would complete the convening of March 14's leaders in Lebanon. The newspaper also reported that Jumblat described it as an excellent move. Hariri's Twitter account posted that Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri called the former Prime Minister to congratulate him for returning safely to Lebanon. Media reports say Hariri received another phone call from Kataib head Amin Jmayel welcoming the step. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi hailed Hariri's decision to return, saying the move was a turning point. Joining me on the line is political analyst Professor Sami Nader. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I'm hearing you well.
Many political figures in Lebanon have welcomed Hariri's return. Do you agree with them that his return will bring progress to the political and security crisis?
Yes, I totally agree. First of all, it's a very important move at the national level. Because Mr. Hariri is the head of the largest parliamentary group. This is one. And Mr. Hariri is a key figure among the Sunni community. And in a country that is based on partnership, having all the partners on the ground is so important in order to show that the spirit of partnership is living. This is one. Second, Mr. Hariri as a moderate figure, his presence in Lebanon is the best answer or the best containment of the rise of radical Islam, or what's called today ISIS or Daesh. The best way to counter this rising wave of radical Islam is to push forward the moderate Sunnis, whether in Lebanon, and Mr. Hariri is a key figure, but also in Iraq. We should keep in mind how Mr. Nujayfi, Mr. Hashimi, Mr. Mutlaq were kicked out of their country, and the vacuum was filled like 2 years later by ISIS, Daesh, that brought down the borders that we know in the Levant. Third, today's presence, the comeback of Mr. Hariri is a support of the Lebanese state, the Lebanese institutions, starting with the Lebanese army, which is under threat, and seeing him assigned to manage this important grant given by Saudi Arabia to the Lebanese army is a key move toward supporting Lebanon, supporting the Lebanese state, And I hope, too, that his comeback will pave the way to the election of a new president as a first step, then to go to a parliamentary election at the national level.
So, Mr. Nader, do you believe that Hariri's presence will actually stop the militants from invading Lebanon?
I think this is compulsory. This is very useful, and because the Muslim community, the Lebanese community, need today to the moderate voices, whether they are from the Sunni community, from the Shia community, or from the Christian community. Today, more than ever, we should call for all moderates to unite in order to counter extremism, whether it's coming from this part of the world or the opposite part.
One last question for you. Reports say Hariri will be here for a while. Do you think he is here to stay?
I hope he's here to stay, and this is the responsibility of the Lebanese political establishment to guarantee the stay of Mr. Hariri, and not to let him be pushed again into exile. I think this is the responsibility of the whole political establishment to take all the necessary measures in order to guarantee his security.
That was political analyst Professor Sami Nader. Thank you so much for your intervention.
Okay.
Residents in Arsal on Friday are struggling to restore a sense of normalcy to the border region after days of heavy clashes. The army, which has not yet deployed inside the town, boosted security in the border region in the early hours of this morning and arrested a sniper who had helped jihadists during their gun battle with the military. Israel has hit the Gaza Strip with missiles and artillery for the first time in 3 days, while Palestinian fighters launched a barrage of rockets at Israel just hours after a ceasefire between the two sides expired. An Israeli airstrike killed a 10-year-old child in Gaza City, the first death reported since a 72-hour truce expired at 8 a.m. local time. Palestinian medics say at least 6 other people were wounded. Witnesses say thousands of Palestinians fled their homes east of Gaza City amid the renewed Israeli attacks. The ceasefire expired as no progress was made in the Egyptian-mediated talks aimed at finding a durable solution to the month-long fighting. Sources say talks among the main Palestinian factions in Cairo were still ongoing just after they announced the refusal to extend the 72-hour truce. A video of a UN official sobbing over the plight of children in Gaza has become one of the many memorable images of the conflict. The clip quickly went viral, spawning dozens of newspaper articles and seemed to channel a collective sadness over the loss of life in the Gaza Strip. Christopher Gunnis, spokesman for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, was being interviewed by Al Jazeera Arabic last Wednesday about the shelling of one of the organization's schools in Gaza, in which at least 15 people died and scores were injured. The school was crammed with families who had fled their homes after warnings from the Israeli military to leave or be bombed. Mr. Gunnis talked to us about the recent developments in Gaza in a Future Television exclusive. Have a listen.
We have, and I say we as the international community, including the UN, we have all let the people of Gaza down in a manner which I consider to be utterly shameful. And so, talking now about a bit of aid here, a bit of aid there, I think is only part of the story. We should be talking about justice and accountability. And that's why UNRWA has made a call, as have others, for an inquiry into what happened. The Human Rights Council has got a commission of inquiry which is coming to the region, because for us this is not just about some jurisprudential concept. For us this is about human dignity, and human beings deserve and must have dignity even in death, and we must restore the dignity to the people who died by at least allowing their loved ones the truth of what happened. So we must find out the truth behind every single one of these statistics, because behind every one of them is a humanity and a dignity and a destiny that needs respecting.
Mr. Gunnis, the UN has condemned the series of recent attacks on its schools in Gaza, but amongst other excuses, Israel claims UNRWA has discovered rocket caches of unknown provenance in its school, and I'm quoting here the Washington Post. Can you confirm this?
We have been very proactive and transparent on 3 occasions when we found caches of weapons in schools, in UNRWA schools that had been mothballed and closed down for the summer, so they're not being used. They weren't these shelters that were being used to house people. And it was in regular inspections by our staff that we found these weapons. We immediately condemned them. I made public statements condemning the groups who did this. It was a flagrant violation of our neutrality and clearly endangered our staff and civilians, and goodness knows they've been endangered quite enough already. We've lost 11 staff members. So the idea that because weapons are found and declared by a neutral UN organisation in one part of the Gaza Strip, that can somehow be used as a justification for direct hits on clearly marked UN schools notified to the Israeli army in other parts of the Gaza Strip is frankly to laugh at international law and the responsibilities of belligerent parties and their protection responsibilities towards civilians during times of war.
So you're saying Israel's shells are not justified? Am I getting
It's not
this
just
right?
me saying it. The Secretary General said it. The American State Department issued a very strongly worded statement calling this a disgraceful act, saying it was appalled. And if you look at the State Department statement, it also says that the suspicion of militants being nearby does not justify an attack endangering thousands of civilians.
You recently tweeted a sustainable ceasefire requires the end of the blockade of Gaza. Are you hopeful this will be achieved?
I mean, it breaks my heart. I can't believe it can go on. I mean, these people in Gaza, they were blockaded before, then they've been bombarded. Many of them have been made homeless. Many were killed, or multiple were killed. There were multiple deaths in UN premises. They've now gone home to find themselves, without a house to live in. I can't believe that we're all going to stand idly by and watch this crippling blockade deny them their dignity and their humanity. It seems to me that after Gaza 2014, something really has changed. Perhaps it was my crying on television which unlocked a certain international indignation. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I certainly think that this time round, there is a profound, visceral sense that what was there before cannot go on, and that people, simply can't be subjected to this level of indignity for any longer.
You are still there despite the heavy criticism you've been facing from Israel for standing with those Palestinians. As a UN member, what is driving you to stand up so strong for those refugees?
Well, look, it's not just me. I mean, we have 13,000 staff in Gaza who are working alongside these desperate, traumatized, dispossessed, and many of them now homeless people. And I think what motivates all of us is a profound sense of justice and of a humanitarian mission. I mean, how can you possibly allow these people who are so disadvantaged to carry on? We have to do something. There's a moral and there's a humanitarian imperative, and we will continue. That's what motivates us.
Coming up next, Ebola is declared an international emergency. Stay tuned.